The lighthouse hadn't worked in 15 years, but Marcus called it home anyway. Perched on jagged cliffs overlooking an endless purple ocean, the structure suited his need for isolation. 3 years since he'd crashed his transport ship on this forgotten world called Visha, and 3 years since he'd spoken more than a dozen words to another living soul. Rain hammered against the lighthouse's curved walls as Marcus descended the spiral staircase, his weathered boots echoing on metal steps. At 42, his body still carried the lean strength of his pilot days, though silver now threaded through his dark hair and beard. Scars crisscrossed his forearms, souvenirs from the crash that had stranded him here. He reached the bottom floor and froze. The door hung open, swinging wildly in the storm wind. Marcus knew he'd locked it. His hand instinctively reached for the plasma cutter he kept mounted by the entrance. Not a weapon, but it would do in a pinch. "Hello?" His voice felt rusty from disuse. A whimper answered him, barely audible above the storm. Marcus moved cautiously toward the sound, plasma cutter raised. In the corner behind his salvaged furniture, 2 tiny figures huddled together, soaked and trembling. They couldn't have been more than 3 feet tall, with luminescent skin that shifted between pale lavender and soft pink. Delicate crystalline wings, one pair clearly damaged, protruded from their backs. Their large eyes, amber and terrified, fixed on him. "Please don't hurt us," they said in perfect unison, their voices like wind chimes. Marcus lowered the plasma cutter. In all his time on Nesha, he'd never seen beings like these. The planet was supposedly uninhabited, abandoned after some corporate mining venture went bust decades ago. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said slowly. "You're injured." The one on the left, he could see now they were identical twins, clutched her sister's hand. Her wing bent at an unnatural angle, the crystalline structure fractured and leaking soft light. "Hunters," the other one whispered. "They're coming for us." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What kind of hunters?" "The ones who cage our kind," said the injured twin, "who sell us to collectors across the galaxy. Our wings, our tears, they're valuable." "Your tears?" "They crystallize," explained the healthier twin. "Can be used in medicine, in jewelry, in—" She broke off, shuddering. "We escaped from a transport ship. It crashed in your ocean 3 days ago. We've been hiding, but they have scanners. They'll find us." Marcus ran a hand through his wet hair. This was exactly the kind of complication he'd fled civilization to avoid. But looking at these 2 fragile beings, barely more than children, despite whatever their actual age might be, he felt something stir that he'd thought long dead. Conscience, perhaps. Or just the inability to turn away from creatures clearly in need. "What are your names?" he asked, setting the plasma cutter aside. "I'm Nira," said the one with the broken wing. "Sola," added her sister. "Marcus." He grabbed a thermal blanket from his sleeping area and wrapped it around them both. "Let me see that wing." Nira extended the damaged appendage hesitantly. Up close, Marcus could see the intricate structure part, organic, part something else entirely. The fracture wept luminous fluid that hardened to crystal on contact with air. "I'm not a medic," he admitted, "but I've fixed a lot of broken things. Transport ships mostly, but maybe the principle's the same." "You're helping us?" Sola's voice carried disbelief. "We're nothing to you. Helping us puts you in danger." Marcus met her amber eyes. "Yeah, well, I've been in danger before. Survived it, too." He stood, moving to his workbench. "I've got materials here, synthetic binding agents, structural supports I use for ship repairs. Might be able to stabilize that wing." As he gathered supplies, Nira spoke softly. "Why are you alone here, Marcus? This whole lighthouse, this whole cliff, it's just you." "Long story," he muttered. "Let's focus on keeping you 2 alive first." The next hour passed in careful work. Marcus's hands, accustomed to precision repairs on ship components, adapted to the delicate task of splinting near his wing. The twins watched him with a mixture of gratitude and wonder, occasionally whispering to each other in a language that sounded like music. "You have kind hands," Nira said, as Marcus finished securing the last support strut. "Gentle. That's rare in beings your size." "Size doesn't determine gentleness," Marcus replied. He cleaned up the work area, very aware of how small and vulnerable these beings were. "You should rest. There's a storage room upstairs. No windows, only one entrance. Safer than down here." Sola helped her sister to her feet. "The hunters won't give up easily. Their leader, Garrick, is relentless. If they find us here, they'll kill you without hesitation. Then I guess we'd better make sure they don't find you." As Marcus guided the twins up the spiral staircase, thunder crashed outside, followed by a sound that made his blood run cold, the high-pitched whine of aerial engines, the kind used by military-grade pursuit vehicles. "They're here," Nira breathed, her good wing fluttering anxiously. Marcus's jaw tightened. The isolation he'd craved for 3 years was about to shatter, and there was no going back. He settled the twins in the storage room, then descended to gather weapons, the plasma cutter, a kinetic rifle he'd traded for 2 years ago, some improvised explosives he'd created from mining equipment. The door burst open. A figure stood silhouetted against the storm, rain streaming off armor that seemed to absorb light. But this wasn't one of the hunters. The stance was wrong, the energy different. "Step away from the stairs, human," a female voice commanded. "Untracking escaped property, and my scanner says they're in this structure." Marcus raised the rifle. "There's no property here. Just me." The figure stepped inside, and Marcus got his first clear look at her. Tall nearly his height, with skin the color of deep ocean water, and hair like silver starlight pulled into a warrior's braid. Her eyes were the same amber as the twins, but harder, carrying the weight of battles fought and survived. She wore fitted armor that left her arms bare, revealing intricate tattoos that seemed to move in the lightning flashes. "I can smell their fear," she said, nostrils flaring. "You're harboring them. That makes you complicit in theft." "Theft?" Marcus's grip tightened on the rifle. "They're living beings, not cargo. They're registered assets of the Syndicate. I'm Vesna, sanctioned recovery agent." Her hand moved to the blade at her hip. "Last chance. Surrender them, or I take them by force." Marcus studied her, noting the slight hesitation in her movement, the way her eyes flickered toward the stairs, with something that looked less like greed and more like concern. "They're not with the hunters," he said slowly. "You're one of them. One of their kind?" Vesna's expression flickered surprise, then grudging respect. Observant. "Yes, I'm Veshan." "What of it?" "Then why are you hunting your own people?" "Because survival requires compromise." But her voice carried a brittleness that suggested she didn't fully believe her own words. "Now move aside." Upstairs, a crash echoed, followed by the twins' terrified cries. Marcus and Vesna both reacted instantly, racing for the stairs. They burst into the storage room to find the window shattered, rain pouring in. 2 figures in dark tactical gear grappled with Nira and Sola, trying to force them toward the broken window where a hovering extraction vehicle waited in the storm. Marcus didn't think. He lunged forward, slamming into the nearest hunter with his full weight. They tumbled across the floor, and Marcus brought his fist down hard on the attacker's helmet, cracking the visor. Vesna moved like liquid lightning, her blade singing free of its sheath. She cut through the second hunter's restraints on Sola, then pivoted to slash the extraction cable reaching through the window. The vehicle outside banked sharply, and a voice crackled over comms. "Vesna? What are you doing?" She didn't answer, instead pulling Sola close and shielding her with her own body, as weapons fire erupted from the hovering craft. Marcus grabbed Nira and dove behind a stack of supply crates, his mind racing. Everything had changed in seconds. The lone huntress had just turned traitor to her employers, and now they were all targets. "Storage room is compromised," Vesna shouted over the chaos. "We need to move now." "There's a service tunnel," Marcus yelled back. "Leads to the cliff base. It's our only chance." Vesna's amber eyes met his across the room, and in that moment, something passed between them, an understanding. A shared commitment to protecting the vulnerable beings cowering between them. "Lead the way, human," she said. "I'll cover our retreat." Marcus scooped up both twins, despite their protests, and ran for the hidden panel in the wall. Behind him, he heard Vesna's blade deflecting incoming fire, heard her warriors cry as she bought them precious seconds as they plunged into darkness. The lighthouse groaning under weapon impacts above. Marcus realized his isolated life had just ended. But looking at the terrified twins in his arms, then back at the fierce warrior following close behind, he found he didn't regret it. Some things were worth fighting for after all. The service tunnel reeked of salt and decay. Marcus led them through darkness, broken only by the bioluminescent moss clinging to the walls, his broad shoulders scraping against stone that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. Behind him, the twins clung together, their natural glow providing additional light. Vesna brought up the rear, her blade still drawn, listening for pursuit. "How far does this go?" Vesna asked, her voice echoing off damp walls. "Half a kilometer to the beach," Marcus replied, helping Nira over a collapsed section. "There's a cave system there. Used to be part of the old mining operation. They'll have aerial surveillance," Vesna said. "Garrick doesn't leave anything to chance." "Who's Garrick?" Marcus glanced back at her. Vesna's jaw tightened. "The Syndicate's lead acquisitions officer. He's the one who I've been working for. Until 5 minutes ago." "Why did you help us?" Sola asked, her small voice trembling. "You could have taken us. Collected your payment." Vesna was quiet for a long moment, navigating a steep decline in the tunnel. "Because I remembered what it felt like to be hunted. To be seen as property instead of a person." Marcus caught the weight in those words, the history behind them. He filed it away for later, focusing on getting them to safety first. They emerged onto a rocky beach just as the storm began to break. Purple-tinged clouds raced overhead, and the ocean churned with foam. Marcus led them along the cliff base to a narrow fissure, barely visible in the rock face. "In here," he commanded, ushering them into the cave entrance. Inside, the sound of the ocean became muffled. The cave stretched deep into the cliff, with multiple chambers branching off the main passage. Marcus had explored it years ago, mapping it out of sheer boredom. Now that knowledge was saving their lives. He led them to a chamber far from the entrance, where mineral deposits created natural seating. "We should be safe here for a while. The rock will interfere with most scanning equipment." Nira collapsed onto a smooth boulder, her splinted wing drooping. Sola immediately pressed against her sister, and Marcus noticed how they seemed to share strength, their glows synchronizing. Vesna stood at the chamber entrance, alert and tense. In the cave's dim light, Marcus got his first proper look at her. She was magnificent, all lean muscle and coiled power, with features that were both alien and achingly beautiful. The tattoos on her arms weren't just decoration, he realized. They were scars, ritualistic marks that told a story he didn't yet know how to read. "You're staring," Vesna said without turning around. "Sorry." Marcus cleared his throat. "I'm trying to figure out if I should trust you." "Smart." She finally faced him, amber eyes assessing. "I wouldn't trust me either. I spent 2 years hunting my own people for the Syndicate, telling myself I had no choice, that survival justified anything. What changed?" Vesna's gaze drifted to the twins. I saw them in the holding cells before they escaped. Nira tried to heal another prisoner's wounds, despite her own injuries. Sola sang to calm the others, even though she was terrified. Her voice roughened. They reminded me of my sister, before the syndicate took her. The silence that followed was heavy with shared pain. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly. Don't be. Sorry doesn't change anything. Vesna sheathed her blade and moved deeper into the chamber. We need a plan. Garrick will tear this entire region apart, looking for them. He has a crew of 20, plus aerial support. And we have what? One rifle, your sword, and my plasma cutter? Marcus shook his head. We're outgunned. No, Nira said softly. Both Marcus and Vesna turned to look at the twins. You have us. Your children, Vesna protested. We're trying to protect you, not put you in danger. We're not as helpless as we look, Sola added. She held out her hand, palm up, and concentrated. The air above her palm shimmered, then crystallized into a small, sharp shard. Our tears aren't the only thing that crystallizes. Under stress, we can shape crystal from moisture in the air. Weapons, Marcus realized. Or shields, Nira said. Our mother taught us. She said our people were warriors once, before the syndicate broke us. Made us forget our strength. Vesna knelt before the twins, her expression intense. If you fight, Garrick will kill you instead of capturing you. He doesn't tolerate resistance. Then we die free, Sola said simply. Better than dying in a cage? Marcus felt his chest tighten. These small, fragile beings had more courage than most soldiers he'd known. Let's try to avoid anyone dying. Vesna, you know how Garrick operates. What's his weakness? Arrogance, Vesna answered immediately. He sees everyone as inferior, underestimates his targets. She stood, pacing. He'll come himself to deal with me. I betrayed him, and he'll want to make an example. So we use that, Marcus said, his military training kicking in. We lure him into a trap. Somewhere we control the terrain. The old mining facility, Vesna suggested. About 5 kilometers inland. Multiple levels. Plenty of choke points. Too obvious. He'll expect that. Marcus thought hard. What about the Crystal Valleys? You mentioned your people having sanctuaries. Vesna's eyes widened. How do you know about the valleys? I've explored this planet for 3 years. Found a lot of things I wasn't supposed to. Marcus pulled out a worn map from his jacket. There's a valley network about 15 kilometers north. The crystals grow dense there, and there are structures old, but intact. Those are sacred places, Vesna breathed. No outsider has... I didn't disturb anything, Marcus interrupted. Just observed. But if your people have sanctuaries there, maybe we can find allies. Vesna exchanged a look with the twins, something passing between them that Marcus couldn't interpret. Finally, she nodded. The Elder Council maintains a refuge in the northern valleys. But they don't trust humans. They barely trust me anymore. We'll make them understand, Sola said firmly. How do we get there without being spotted? Marcus asked. Vesna smiled for the first time, and it transformed her face from fierce to devastating. I know paths the syndicate has never found. I may have worked for them, but I never gave them everything. They rested for an hour, taking turns keeping watch. Marcus found himself studying Vesna when she thought he wasn't looking, the way she moved with predatory grace. The protective way she checked on the twins. The haunted look that crossed her face when she thought no one was watching. You're staring again, Vesna said, peering suddenly beside him at the cave entrance. Can't help it, Marcus admitted. You're different from what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone colder, I guess. More mercenary. Vesna leaned against the cave wall, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. I've been cold for a long time. Had to be to survive. But those twins in there, they're thawing something I thought was frozen permanently. I know the feeling, Marcus said. I came to this planet to be alone, to not care about anything or anyone anymore. What happened? Before you crashed here? Marcus hesitated, old pain surfacing. I was a transport pilot. Civilian vessels, mostly refugees. There was an attack during evacuation, pirates targeting the ships. I got most people to safety, but he swallowed hard. My co-pilot. She was also my wife. She didn't make it. Vesna's hand found his, her fingers strong and warm. I'm sorry. You said sorry doesn't change anything. No, but it acknowledges the pain. That matters. They stood together in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the storm's last traces fade over the ocean. Marcus felt something shift inside him, ice cracking around his heart. We should move, Vesna said eventually, but she didn't pull her hand away. Dawn's coming. Garrick will launch a full search at first light. They gathered the twins and prepared to leave. Marcus packed what supplies he could carry, while Vesna checked their weapons. As they moved toward the cave exit, Nira suddenly gasped, her glow flaring bright. Someone's coming, she whispered. I can feel their intent. Angry, violent. Vesna drew her blade instantly, positioning herself between the twins and the entrance. Marcus raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. 3 figures emerged from the pre-dawn darkness, silhouetted against the lightening sky. They wore syndicate armor, weapons trained on the cave entrance. Vesna! One of them called. Garrick wants to talk. Come out peacefully, and he might let you live. Tell Garrick I'm done talking, Vesna shouted back. Your choice. The figure raised a hand, and suddenly the cave entrance exploded inward. Rubble flying as explosives detonated. Marcus grabbed both twins and dove sideways, shielding them with his body as stone shards rained down. He felt something sharp slice across his shoulder, but ignored the pain. Vesna was already moving, a blur of motion as she vaulted over falling debris and engaged the attackers. Her blade sang through the air, deflecting weapons fire with impossible precision. One hunter went down immediately, clutching a wounded arm. Marcus scrambled up, passing Nira and Sola to each other. Stay back, he ordered, then joined Vesna in the fight. He'd been a pilot, not a soldier, but survival instinct was universal. He fired controlled bursts from his rifle, driving the hunters back while Vesna worked in close combat. They moved together naturally, covering each other's blind spots without needing to communicate. The second hunter fell to Vesna's blade. The third retreated, speaking urgently into a comm unit. Reinforcements incoming, Vesna panted, blood streaking her face from a cut above her eye. We're out of time. Then we run, Marcus said. He grabbed her arm. Come on. They fled into the pre-dawn landscape, the twins flying despite Nira's damaged wing, Marcus and Vesna running side by side. Behind them, the whine of engines grew louder. There. Sola pointed to a narrow ravine cutting through the hills. The crystals grow thick there. They'll interfere with their scanners. They plunged into the ravine, and immediately Marcus felt the air change. Energy hummed around them, raising the hair on his arms. The walls glowed with crystalline formations, pulsing in rhythm with the twins' natural luminescence. This way, Vesna urged, taking the lead now. She moved with confident familiarity, navigating switchbacks and narrow passages. The valley entrance is close. An explosion rocked the ravine walls. Marcus looked back to see a hovering assault vehicle at the entrance, weapons platforms deploying. Run! He shouted. They raced through the crystal passage as energy bolts seared the air around them. Marcus felt heat scorch past his ear, smelled burning stone. Ahead, the passage opened into something vast. They burst into the crystal valley. Just as the sun crested the horizon, Marcus stopped, breathless, staring in awe. Before them stretched a valley, filled with crystal formations as tall as buildings, glowing with internal light. Structures built into and around the crystals housed dozens of the Shan refugees, their luminescent forms moving through the morning routine. And standing at the valley center, surrounded by warriors in ancient armor, was an elderly Vishan with silver hair and eyes like liquid amber. "Vesna," the elder said, voice carrying across the valley. "You return to us at last, and you bring a human." "Elder Kestrin," Vesna dropped to one knee, pulling Marcus down with her. "We seek sanctuary." "The twins, we know," Kestrin interrupted. "We've felt their distress for days. The question is whether we grant sanctuary to you after your betrayal, and to this human who should not even know we exist." Before Vesna could respond, the assault vehicle crested the ravine edge behind them. Weapons locked on their position. A voice boomed across the valley, amplified by speakers. "Vesna, you've led us right to them. How very helpful. Surrender now, and I'll kill you quickly. Resist, and everyone in this valley dies." Garrick had found them, and Marcus realized with cold certainty that the real battle was only just beginning.